the story of a man with no food, no fresh water, no electronic devices of any kind, only with a simple fishing boat. Adrift on the vast ocean for 438 days. He drifted over 10,000 kilometers, constantly facing sharks, storms, and countless harsh challenges. So, could he return safely, and what happened that caused him to drift at sea for those 438 days? Right now, let's join Kanha TV to turn back time to 2014 and revisit this amazing survival journey in the story. And before getting into the main content, don't forget to like, subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest content from us. Now, let's get started right away. The Marshall Islands is an island nation in the North Pacific with a total of 1,225 islands and atolls. With 97.87% of its territory being sea, this land truly deserves the name Kingdom on the Water. However, from 1946 to 1958, the United States conducted 67 nuclear tests on the Bikini and Eniwetok atolls, causing severe ecological consequences. Our story today begins from the Ailing Laplap Atoll, located in the southern part of the Marshall Islands. On January 30, 2014, on Ailing Laplap Atoll, a couple harvesting coconuts discovered a strange man. He appeared agitated yet emaciated, skeletal, with a vacant stare, chapped lips, and disheveled hair, as if uncared for, and in alarming health condition. Immediately upon seeing this, the couple contacted local medical personnel. Medical examination results revealed the man's serious condition: ankles swollen to the point of near immobility, anemia, malnutrition, dehydration, skin infections, and psychological disorders. After finding an interpreter, the man was identified as Jose Salvador Alvarenga, a citizen from Mexico, about 10,000 kilometers from Ailing Laplap Atoll. He recounted that he encountered a storm while fishing offshore, leading to engine failure, and had drifted for over 14 months before being rescued by a coconut harvesting couple. In other words, this extraordinary man survived at sea for 438 days without any external assistance. If this story is true, it is truly a miracle that occurred. The story of Alvarenga's adventure quickly spread across the island. The next day, local newspapers published details of the incident, making it an immediate media sensation and sparking public debate. Conflicting opinions emerged, with some calling it a one-in-a-million miracle, the greatest survival journey in human history, while others doubted the story's authenticity, considering the feat completely impossible. After a few days, Alvarenga's sea adventure was further embellished and widely disseminated. By February 3rd, reporters from around the world flocked to Ebi Island to witness this extraordinary man firsthand and gather information directly from the protagonist. Under the watch of international media, Alvarenga appeared in simple attire, a brown t-shirt and shorts, smiling and waiting before a barrage of reporters' cameras. In subsequent interviews, he shared his arduous yet miraculous journey. Alvarenga, born on July 15, 1975, in El Salvador, had a father who owned a flour mill in town, so the family was relatively well off. Growing up with parental love, Alvarenga once intended to live a simple, settled life. However, seeing his siblings venture out, he felt compelled to explore the world himself. Thus, in 2002, Alvarenga decided to leave his homeland and become a fisherman in Mexico. There, he met and became close friends with a kindred spirit named Ray. The two became a perfect pair in fishing, cooperating seamlessly and effectively. On November 16, 2012, Alvarenga set out to sea as usual under the boat owner's orders. This time, they would depart from a small fishing village near Chiapas, Mexico, heading to deep waters to fish for sharks. To prepare for this trip, Alvarenga refurbished his 7.62 meters long, 2.1 meters wide boat and stocked up on all necessary supplies. The boat had no shelter or cabin, just a simple fishing vessel. Before setting sail, he loaded the boat with the prepared essentials, including 265 liters of gasoline, 60.57 liters of fresh water, 23 kilograms of fishing bait, 91 kilograms of ice, over 700 hooks, a gaff hook, 3 knives, 3 buckets, a mobile phone, a waterproof GPS device, and a radio with half battery. All preparations were complete. S reliable companion fell seriously ill and couldn't. Logically, Jose could wait a few days for Ray to recover before sailing, but the weather had been poor lately and a storm could hit at any time. If they didn't depart soon, when the storm came, it would be a long time before he could set out again. In this urgent situation, Jose turned to Cordova, a 23-year-old local with potential as a soccer goalkeeper. Although Cordova had no seafaring experience, Jose decided to choose him as there was no other option. Faced with a payment of $50 per trip lasting only 12 hours, Cordova almost accepted immediately. On November 17, 2012, before dawn, the two set off, their small boat quickly disappearing toward the distant horizon. At that time, they still didn't know the risks awaiting them ahead. Initially, everything went quite smoothly. They only hoped the boat had a container full of 500 pounds of freshly caught fish, including tuna, marlin, and small sharks. That would be enough for Jose to receive a generous payment. But just as the two were rejoicing, the weather suddenly changed. The storm hit quickly, with strong gusts and raging seaways. Jose tried to steer the boat toward shore, but the wind was too strong and the waves too fierce, pushing their boat further away. Dark clouds rolled in from the horizon as if about to collapse. The small boat drifted in the vast sea. They had never witnessed such a scene before. Cordova was completely devastated. He clung to the boat's side, vomiting violently and crying bitterly. Jose remained calm, gripping the helm tightly, doing his best to keep the boat balanced. Around 9 a.m., he noticed a mountain rising in the far horizon, about 2 hours away. Jose was overjoyed and intended to steer the boat toward it, but unfortunately, at that moment, water flooded the engine, causing a short circuit. He quickly used the radio to contact the boat owner, reporting the engine failure. The GPS was damaged by water Tino the boat. He also had no anchor, as it had been lost before departure. The person on the other end promised to come and pick him up. After sending the distress signal, Jose planned to stay put and wait for rescue. But the huge waves seemed intent on sinking the small boat. The 500 pounds of fish they had caught were too heavy, making it hard to keep the boat balanced. Believing that wealth is external, Jose threw the fish, stones, and reserve fuel into the sea. Although they were only 24 kilometers from the coast ahead, it felt like thousands of miles away. The strong wind kept pushing the small boat away from shore, gradually into the Pacific Ocean. Around 10 a.m., the radio also broke down. Large waves continued to flood the boat. Cordova frantically bailed water out, bucket after bucket. A few hours later, the wind gradually subsided. By then, both were exhausted. Jose angrily smashed the engine and threw the broken radio and GPS into the sea. After venting his anger, he was left with only feelings of helplessness and despair. The sun set, the storm raged on, accompanied by a biting cold. Soaked and with freezing limbs, the two had to crawl into the fish container. They tried to hug each other to keep warm. Early on the morning of November 18th, the storm had weakened. Jose and Cordova discussed how to get back. But in the end, they realized it was impossible. First, they had no tools to determine direction. They didn't even know where they were, let alone find their way back to shore. Second, the engine had short-circuited and was further damaged by Jose's smashing. The small boat could only drift with the wind, not knowing where it would go. Third, their boat was very simple, with no cabin, no oars, no spotlight. So even if any ships passed by, it would be hard to spot them. Fourth, in the distress signal sent to the boat owner, T specified the coordinates, so the owner didn't. In short, they were now cornered. Most likely, they would be trapped at sea until death. In such desperate circumstances, maintaining morale was extremely important. Pugne told himself he must first fill his stomach. There was some dry meat and fresh water on the boat. He also caught more fish from the sea. He asked Miss Du to cut the fish into finger-sized pieces and dry them on the bow of the boat. They ate both raw and dried fish, barely surviving day by day. Occasionally, if lucky, they also caught some seabirds and sea turtles to improve their meals. Sometimes, Pugne even found those quite delicious, which was fortunate. But the problem was that fresh water was limited, and seawater was too salty to quench thirst. They dared not drink it, with no other choice. They had to temporarily drink sea turtle blood and urine. During times of hunger and thirst, both could only lie listlessly on the deck. But fortunately, heaven does not seal off all exits. After about 14 days struggling with hunger and thirst, it finally rained. At that time, Hude was sleeping in a barrel when he suddenly heard a pattering sound. Hude shouted, jumped up, and woke Cordova. The two rushed onto the deck, using barrels to collect rainwater. They opened their mouths in the rain like sparrows, took off their clothes, and enjoyed the cool water soaking their bodies. While collecting water, they laughed loudly, taking sips every few minutes. This rain was their savior. The collected rainwater was enough for them to survive for at least 2 weeks. During this time, Hude always paid attention to searching the sea, not missing anything. He picked up a green garbage bag full of leftover food. Inside was a piece of chewing gum, half a cabbage, some carrots, and a bottle of spoiled milk. These ordinary things, which they wouldn't have glanced at normally, were now priceless treasures. They greedily chewed the fresh carrots and sipped the spoiled milk. After eating and drinking their fill, the two lay side by side watching the sunset descend. The sea surface shimmering, they were mesmerized by the magnificent scene. A spark of hope ignited in their hearts. Perhaps they could continue surviving like this until rescue. That night they talked a lot, sharing about their families and each other's work. Time flew by and 2 months had passed adrift at sea. Every day was a challenge, but Hude, with the experience of a seasoned fisherman, had become more skilled at hunting sea turtles, seabirds, and fish, and had grown accustomed to eating raw meat. Although his health wasn't great, at least he had no serious problems. But Cordova's situation was completely different. He was originally just a soccer goalkeeper, never expecting to be trapped at sea thousands of miles from home. After eating a sea bird, Cordova fell ill, both physically and mentally deteriorating rapidly. Only 23 years old, but his eyes already resembled those of a dying old man. More importantly, he seemed to have lost all hope of living and even began to refuse food. Hude and Cordova made a promise together. Ultimately, whoever survived must visit the other's parents. If both survived, they would eat a hearty meal together and build a future. That promise became a last glimmer of hope in this desperate situation. One morning, Cordova's breathing became weak and slow. His mouth, but he didn't. His body convulsed for a moment and then became still. There was no sign of life left. That 23-year-old young man took his last breath on the vast sea. Later, whenever he recalled this, Hude still felt immense pain. He was afraid the sea waves would sweep Cordova away. He held it moist enough to prevent him from falling into the water. He didn't want to believe that his companion had passed away. For the next 6 days, Hude talked to Cordova's body every day. On a moonless night, while sitting beside Cordova, in shock, he realized he couldn't continue like this. Hude removed Cordova's clothes and pushed him into the sea. Left alone, Hude entered the most difficult phase of his life. Amid the vast ocean, loneliness seemed to overwhelm him. Nevertheless, he had no intention of suicide, as his mother was a devout Christian. In Christianity, suicide is a sin, never to be saved, unable to enter heaven. Thus, he continued to endure the suffering alone at sea. Large ships passed by, but they were often container ships crossing the Pacific. Like unmanned drones on the sea, no one noticed him. Though unable to call for help, each time he saw those ships, Hude was filled with hope. He kept waving and jumping until the giant ships disappeared on the horizon. To escape a lonely reality, Hude often immersed himself in a mental world. He imagined himself on a luxurious yacht, enjoying the finest foods on earth, then having a dreamlike romance with a beautiful woman. Like in the movie Titanic, every morning he would stroll on the yacht, dreaming of traveling the world. With family, lover, and children by his side, only then could he suffer less and manage to live day by day. Hude's grandfather had taught him to measure time by lunar cycles since childhood. So, even adrift alone at sea, he clearly remembered having drifted for 15 full moons. Then one day, in the 15th month, Hude suddenly noticed more birds around. He rejoiced in his hardship, as more birds meant nearby habitats, meaning land was near. Sure enough, not long after, a tropical island emerged from the hazy mist. It was a coral island in the Pacific, with a small mountain in the middle surrounded by deep blue seawater. Was this an earthly paradise, a dream, or God's grace? Hodai stared at the land, even doubting his own eyes. After observing for a while, he finally confirmed it was an island. Though only as big as a football field, looking desolate with no paths, for Hodai it was the hope of life. The wind was blowing the boat toward the island, but the wind direction could change at any moment. To get closer to land, Hodai used a knife to cut a worn anchor rope. This was a risky decision, as the anchor stabilized the boat. Without the anchor, even a small wave could capsize the boat. But with no other choice, he gambled that fate would side with him this time. Perhaps heaven took pity. About an hour later, the boat drifted near the beach. When about 10 meters from shore, Hodai jumped into the water. Yet, he was too weak, with no strength left to swim. Fortunately, a large wave surged and sucked him ashore. The moment he touched land, the 36-year-old man burst into tears, clutching a handful of wet sand, and felt that the most precious treasure of this time was just that. In a way, Hodai was indeed fortunate. The island he drifted to was Haven Atoll, the southernmost of the Marshall Islands. If he had missed the Marshall Islands, he might have drifted 5,000 kilometers further west to the Philippines, meaning it would have taken about 200 more days. As condition at the time, he certainly couldn't. At this point, some might wonder why he didn't drift toward the Solomon Islands to the southwest, or to the closer Nauru Islands, which were only 600 kilometers away. East to west drift direction, He wasn't drifting randomly but was influenced by ocean currents. Otherwise, a broken-down boat couldn't drift that far. Hodai's boat was swept into the north equatorial current, flown from east to west due to the influence of the northeast trade winds. Therefore, the boat could only drift westward, unable to go north or south. After coming ashore, Hodai saw a coastal house in the distance. Mr. Lit trudged through the bushes, then stopped by the bank of a small stream opposite the house. At that time, the couple Ruth Sale and Amy, who were eating vegetables, discovered him and brought him home. After the press conference on February 3, 2014, he received additional treatment for a few days at Majuro Hospital, then flew home to his parents in El Salvador on February 10. In just a few short days, his story shocked the press everywhere. Many people didn't believe what Hodai had experienced and kept questioning. It's important to know that the distance from the Mexican coast, where he departed, to San Joel Island is about 10,800 kilometers. According to Hodai's account, he drifted at sea for 438 days. How could someone survive over a year adrift without food or water? Moreover, the weather at sea is unpredictable, sometimes stormy, sometimes intensely. Professor of biology Randall at George Washington University believes a person doing heavy work in a hot environment could die from dehydration in just a few hours. Furthermore, without vitamin supplementation over a long period, people could develop scurvy, a disease caused by a deficiency of vitamin C, ascorbic acid in the body, leading to symptoms like weakness, bleeding gums, and tooth loss. So why didn't Hodai get this disease? A series of questions arose online, and a global debate erupted. Is this ultimately a world-shocking sea escape? The most extraordinary survivor since Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton, or the biggest fraud since the Hitler Diaries? To investigate the authenticity of this sea-drifting story, the police sought out Guli, Hodai's boat owner. Guli confirmed that Hodai went missing after leaving port on November 17, 2012. That day, dozens of people witnessed him setting sail. A Guardian reporter also interviewed the Mexican rescue team. The rescue team said that after receiving Hodai's distress signal, they searched for 2 days but had to stop due to very poor visibility. Additionally, doctors examined Hodai's health and confirmed he was indeed in a weakened state from long-term drifting at sea. He was being treated for dehydration with intravenous fluid. The reason Hodai didn't have scurvy is because fish meat, fresh seafood, and seabirds contain vitamins. And he didn't die from the heat because he used a barrel for shade. Moreover, the U.S. ambassador to the Marshall Islands also spoke with Hodai after he arrived in Majuro and confirmed that what Hodai said was true. Oceanographer Eric Van Sebel of the University of South Florida said it's entirely possible for the ocean current to carry a boat from Mexico to the Marshall Islands. Such a journey typically takes about 18 months, but 13 months is also possible. When Hodai returned home, his siblings were overjoyed. Previously, they thought Hodai had been lost at sea. At the same time, reporters from around the world so persistently wanted to interview Hodai, although he was very weak and tired from media harassment. Hodai refused all interviews, even posting a note on the door pleading with the press to leave him alone. However, reporter Jonathan Franklin persistently persuaded and was eventually granted an interview by Hodai. Jonathan heard the entire story. 438 Days, an extraordinary true story of survival at sea. Notably, not long after the book was published, the family of Kodola, who had passed away, filed a lawsuit against Hodai for murder. They claimed he ate Kodova's flesh to survive. This is entirely possible, as all we know is Hodai's one-sided account. Did he resort to cannibalism to survive? No one can know for sure. Kodova's family demanded millions in compensation. In court, Hodai's lawyer argued that this family only wanted to claim royalties from the book. Many people thought this book had made his client wealthy. But in reality, Hodai's income was much lower than people imagined. Afterwards, to prove his innocence, Hodai voluntarily requested a lie detector test and ultimately passed it. This proves that his sea adventure story was true and that he did not harm his companion. Although what Hodai experienced caused much doubt and controversy, it cannot be denied that he was the first person in history to survive over a year adrift at sea. Hodai brought us a real-life version of Robinson Crusoe, becoming one of the most astonishing survival feats of modern times. His story has been widely spread around the world through books and documentaries. Without a doubt, the survival miracle he wrote with 438 days adrift at sea will forever be recorded in human history.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.